Chapter 25, and dirty words. I'll not put down what the actual words that Billy and Steve said. I know I set out to tell this story like it happened, but I don't want to put those words down on paper, especially in a story for my teacher to read. So I'll make up some words to use instead of the real ones. I can't believe this, Billy said. What a gribbets McPlank thing to do. Exactly, Steve said. It's rovish. Only a magnet top would pull a furzy trick like this, Billy said. Wait a minute, I said, and don't say that about my grandpa. I'll say what I like, Billy said. He was really mad. He's a magnet top. How can you deny it? He is not a magnet top, I said in a loud voice. My grandpa is a great guy, and he pulls furzy tricks, Steve said. Steve had me there. It was a pretty furzy, all right. Maybe, I said, but I sure have given him a couple of reasons for it. I started this war, don't forget. Well, the guys went on and on for a while, saying some more rovish things about Grandpa, and I defended him. It took some time for all of us to simmer down. Then Steve got that funny look in his face and shut up while Billy ran down at the mouth. It may be terrific, Steve said then. What's so terrific about about it? Billy asked. He has risen to the bait, don't you see? Said Steve. I mean, he's in the game now. He wants to play. And that's good. We can't play Monopoly now and you say it's good, said Billy. You've got your grandpa involved now, Steve said, ignoring Billy. He's feeling the pressure. How? Now you've got to keep it up. How? I said. Attack, 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 Steve said. Yeah, Billy said. Hit him again. I'm not so sure, I said. I really wasn't sure either. Burn his underwear, Billy said. What? I didn't think I heard Billy right. Sneak in, grab all his underwear, and burn it. A man can't go anywhere without his underwear. And how do you burn underwear? I asked sarcastically. Throw it in the furnace, Billy said. Don't be stupid, I said. I wouldn't go anywhere near our furnace for anything, much less throw underwear into it. Rip it up then, Billy said. Just throw it in the trash, but do it. Not on your life, I said. You're not a secret warrior, Billy said. You're a chicken. I'm a grandson, I said. There are some things I am not going to do, no matter how much my friends egg me on. Chicken, Billy said. It's not your war, I said. Gribbets McPlank, Billy called me, which he knows I don't like. I didn't say anything back. You've got to do something, Steve said. I will, I said. What? Steve asked. I don't know. When? Sometime, someplace, I said. Steve and Billy both laughed at me then, and in a little bit they left, both of them mad at me and me annoyed with them. So Grandpa's first attack really worked after all. It took 3 good friends and made them rovish with each other. Chapter 26, Rocker and Roll. You can bet your life I went looking for Grandpa right after the boys left, but he was too clever for me. He hung around in the kitchen where Mom was preparing dinner. Then he played a few hands of casino with Jenny. By that time, Dad was home from the office. I didn't get to speak to him alone and in private until after school the next day, and he was up in my room when I got home. He had his big toolbox up there, and he was sitting on my bed, carving a little piece of wood with his knife. Hello, Peach, he said in a friendly way. How was school today? I put my knapsack down. A lot you care, I said. I care, Grandpa said. How did you know we were going to play Monopoly? I asked. Aha, he grinned. A military secret. I suppose you'd think it was funny. Grandpa chuckled. Wasn't it? Here you guys get together to play a game and surprise. Grandpa took the little piece of wood and knelt down next to my rocking chair. Then he tried to fit it into the hole in the back of the chair where the arm kept coming loose. Just a touch too big, he said. You're trying to fix my rocker, I said. Trying to, Grandpa said. He had a piece of sandpaper and was rubbing that little piece of wood like crazy. Are you going to glue it again? I asked. Nope, said Grandpa. Glue won't do it. I'm repegging it, Pete. You see this hole in the back of the arm? I took the old peg out. It used to fit in this other hole here in the back of the rocker. Grandpa tried to put the little piece of wood into place, but it wouldn't fit. Just a little more sanding now, he said. What about all the stuff from my Monopoly game? Can I have it back now? Not, he said. Until what? Until our little disagreement, or whatever you want to call it, is over. I looked at Grandpa, but he was busy sandpapering. I don't think that's fair, I said. It's not, he said. Let's just say your Monopoly pieces are prisoners of war. As soon as we make peace, back they come. I'll never do that, not until you give up my room. Then they'll stay prisoners for a long time, Grandpa said. He took a pair of pliers and gripped them around the middle of the wooden peg. Then he stuck it into the armhole and kind of twisted it while pushing all the time. It took a lot of effort, but Grandpa had big hands and big muscles, and it finally went into the hole about halfway. Got it, Grandpa said. Solid as the rock of Gibraltar. I gave you back your slippers, I said. It seems to me that I had to come up here and find those slippers myself, he said. I didn't see you hand them over, Pete. I thought about that while Grandpa put the pliers away and got out a hammer from the toolbox. The hammer had a rubber tip on the hitting part. I'm going to have to get you back for this, I said. The secret warrior will strike again. I know that, Grandpa said, grinning. That's the fun of it. I couldn't believe he'd said that. You think it's fun? Sure is, he answered. Oh, it took me a while to see it. And then I realized something. I had near lost my whole sense of humor. I hadn't had a good time for ages and ages. Not the last year anyway. Imagine me slapping you like that. What a fool thing to do. He lined up the hole in the back of the rocker with pegs that stuck in the arm. Now watch this, Peter, old boy. Tap, tap, tap. That's all it took. 3 good taps with Grandpa's hammer, and the arm of the rocker was attached to the back. I sat right down in the rocker and tried it out. It was solid, just like Grandpa said. You're a good fixer, I said. Next, I kissed his forehead. I'm the best, Grandpa said. You know, Pete, I used to build whole houses from bottom up. Still would if it wasn't for this bum leg. But I'm starting to feel good again. Got my old pizzazz back, I think. There's lots of things in this house that needs fixing. And I'm the man for the job, kiddo. He gave me a hug then, and it felt good. But when he let me go, I looked at him and said, I'm going to get you for that Monopoly trick, you know. Sure you will, he said. Then he laughed. I can hardly wait. Chapter 27, Goldfish. I was thinking pretty hard about how I was going to get back to back at Grandpa. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of things I could do and a lot I'd never do, like burning his underwear, for instance. I didn't want to do something I'd be sorry for later. I thought about and then actually tried to steal his toolbox and hide it. But I found the thing was so big and heavy that just thinking about carrying up 3 flights of stairs from the basement to hide it in the attic was enough to make me tired. Then I figured out what I'd do. But before I had a chance to do it, I spent a day with Grandpa I want to tell about. On Friday night, Grandpa asked me if I'd ever gone fishing. I told him no, I hadn't. Dad was not a fisherman. And the only time I'd ever saw a live fish was in a fish tank at the fish store. Unless you count the lobster I saw once in a restaurant, but he was cooked. Or the goldfish I had once for about a week until he died. Well, Grandpa said, I'm thinking about going out tomorrow morning to catch us a mess of flounder. I sure appreciate the company, Petey, and I think you'd like it too. I wasn't sure I'd like it. You won't go out in the ocean, will you? I asked. Nope, just a couple of 100 yards from shore in Cold Spring Harbor. Where's that? A short ride away, maybe 30 miles or so. We couldn't run into anything big and dangerous, would we? Like what? Grandpa asked. Like Jaws. Grandpa laughed. Well, now, he said, I never thought of that. I don't think we'll meet up with Jaws, Petey. Leastways, I never have in all the times I fished out there. Okay then, I said, feeling relieved. Grandpa told me we'd be getting up very early the next day, but when he told me to set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., I couldn't believe it. That's the middle of the night, I said. You've got to get up pretty early to outsmart a flounder, he said. Did you ever think get up and out of bed at 4:30 in the morning? It's pitch black outside then. I washed and dressed and put on all the clothing. Grandpa said I need old jeans, a t-shirt, a flannel shirt, an old sweater over that, and my hooded sweatshirt jacket to go on top. Grandpa was down in the kitchen working on a bunch of sandwiches to take along. Ham and bologna, he said. That okay with you? Fine, I said. No mustard on mine. Okay, he said. You should never take tuna or any other fish sandwiches when you go out fishing. Scares the fish. How could that be? I asked. Don't know, Grandpa said Grandpa, but I believe it. He put the bag of sandwiches into the vinyl zipper bag along with a thermos of cold milk for me. He had another big old thermos. He said we'd fill with hot coffee on the way. If you're hungry, Grandpa told me, take some bread or crackers, because we weren't going to eat breakfast for an hour or so. I told him I wasn't hungry. What I was sleepy. We stopped out onto the front porch into the black morning. I peeked into the milk box near the door. The milkman wasn't even here yet, and we're leaving, I said. Why do we have to go fishing so early? I asked. Won't the fish be there in the afternoon too? Tides, Grandpa said as we went to Mom's car. Before I got into the front seat, I squinted up into the black sky. The stars looked like asterisks. Grandpa drove slowly and carefully through the city streets, then turned onto the interstate highway. High tides, Grandpa explained to me, are when most of the fish like to feed. The water comes into the harbor and it brings a lot of fish like to eat. So if you drop your hook on the incoming tide, see Mr. Fish just thinks, here's a tasty nibble, and takes your bait. That's why we have to be out on the water by 7 o'clock today, because the high tide comes at 9 o'clock, 7:09 exactly. He looked over at me in the dark. You do know what a tide is, don't you? It's when the water gets higher and lower, I said. But what makes it do that? The moon, Grandpa said. I thought he was making a joke. How about the stars, I said, or mountains or trees maybe. Grandpa chuckled. Nope, just the moon. And on the full moon you get your highest tides of the month. It's called gravitational pull, Pete. And it's true. You could look it up sometime. People keep charts of tides, and they can tell you when each tide will come for years and years ahead. The tide is very important. Must be, I said. It pulled me right out of bed at 4:30 in the morning, didn't it? We stopped at a diner a little while later and had breakfast. It was only about 5 o'clock in the morning, the earliest I've ever had breakfast in my life. Grandpa had the waitress fill his thermos with coffee, and we hit the road again. Grandpa was humming along with the song on the radio. He seemed very happy. Ahead of us, the sky was beginning to lighten as dawn came up. Ain't it great? Grandpa grinned at me. Just us two gents out on the road, footloose and fancy-free. Don't you love it? It did feel good being out and alone with Grandpa. We got to Cold Spring Harbor just as the sun was peeping all red and gold at the edge of the sky. Grandpa drove down the water and parked near Bill's boat and bait shop. I have to tell something true right here. Inside that, it smelled so awful. There ought to be a law against it. It smelled like rotten fish had been left there for about a year. That smell could gross out my whole class, maybe the whole school. We got two pails and bait and walked along the dock on the other side of where rowboats were tied up. Grandpa helped me into my vest and put one on himself. Then we put all our stuff into the boat. It had a whole wide flat bottom, and Grandpa tucked our fishing rods and tackle under the front seat, then helped me get in. Safety first, he told me. No standing up. Sit in one place on the seat, and tell me beforehand if you want to move around. Aye, sir, I said, and it made him grin. Grandpa untied us from the dock, put the oars into place, and rowed us out into the harbor. It was neat traveling across the smooth water in a boat, the sunlight dancing on the water, and a cold breeze in my face. I love it, I said to Grandpa, and he smiled. There's a whole lot more to tell you about that day, but this chapter is much too long already. I could tell about Grandpa teaching me how to bait a hook with a worm or a piece of dead clam, about how you drop your hook until you feel the bottom and take up just enough slack in your line, or the fantastic feeling when a flounder takes the bait and starts to wiggle and jump around, and how you have to pull him up in so careful and slow, and getting him up and into the boat. Almost everything about that day was wonderful. We caught a whole lot of fish, more than 20. I got so hungry I ate my first sandwich before 9 o'clock. I learned how to row a boat. It was hard to do, but I rowed us part way back to the dock. I learned how to clean a fish and get the scales off. It was an adventure. exciting, thrilling, and just a little bit of danger behind it, and I loved every minute of it. We're going to do this again, I told Grandpa on the way home. You bet we are, he said, and we have gone fishing together a lot, many times since that first day. Once we even took Jenny along and she liked it too, but nothing will ever make me forget that first time alone with Grandpa. So you can see why I felt a little sad later that night when I sneaked into my old room and stole Grandpa's wristwatch. Chapter 28, Playing Hardball. It did not take Grandpa too long to discover that his watch was missing, and I guess he didn't have to walk around trying to figure out where it had gone. He came upstairs the next morning. It was a Sunday, and I was waiting around for Mom and Dad to wake up so I could get downstairs for breakfast. I heard Grandpa coming and grabbed a book so I could be pretending to read. Grandpa knocked on my door ever so lightly, then pushed it open a crack to look in. Awake, I see it, he said. He came in and sat down in my rocker. He was wearing his pajamas, robe, and slippers. A funny thing happened this morning, he said. I went to slip my watch on, and guess what? It seemed to be missing from my dresser. Is that so? I said in a casual way. That's a fact. Well, I said, maybe there was a thief who came into the house last night and stole it. Don't think so, Grandpa said, seeing as how my wallet was on the dresser too, right next to my watch, and it wasn't even touched. I had quite a few dollars in it too. Maybe it was a very dumb thief, I said, or a thief who needed only a watch. Grandpa looked at me and grinned. He didn't blame me. I didn't blame him. What I said sounded stupid to me too. How come you didn't leave a note? Grandpa said. I think we're past all of that, I said. Maybe so. I took your watch, I said. We both know that. Grandpa kind of shook his head a little. I was kind of thinking maybe our little war was over, he said, especially after yesterday. I had a very good time fishing with you, Pete. You're very good company. Well, I said, it wasn't your average kind of day for me either. I had one of the best days of my life with you, but, I said, and sort of shrugged. It doesn't change things, Grandpa. So I see. There's something I want, and you have, and I don't know what else to do except fight for what's mine, I said. Too bad, Grandpa said, but look, Petey, I have a special reason for wanting my watch back. It was a gift from Grandpa, you see, on our 40th wedding anniversary. I treasure it, son. Well, now I felt the most miserable, low-down person in the whole wide world, but I wasn't about to give up. It's in a safe place, Grandpa, I said, and I'll take good care of it. It was wrapped up in a knot and snug in a pair of my white socks and hidden away in a tennis ball can in the bottom of my camp trunk. I could probably find it if I looked, Grandpa said. I don't think so, I said. I'm pretty good at looking, Grandpa said. When you're in school, Pete, I've got all day to turn this place over. You could look for 1,000,000 years and never find it, I said. Grandpa sighed and rocked a few times in the chair. I'd rather you hand it back yourself, he said. No way, I said. Not until you give me my room back. I've heard that before, he said. How about if I say please? Look, Grandpa, I said, all you have to do is tell Mom and Dad that you want to switch rooms with me. That's easy, isn't it? Grandpa took a long look in my eyes, rocking so gently in my chair. You're really like you're a broken record. You know that, he said. I only want what's rightly mine, I said. So, Grandpa said, now we're playing hardball, eh? I'm not playing, I said. No room, no watch. Fair enough, Grandpa said. He got up and slowly walked to the door. But from now on, he said, you'd better watch out. Chapter 29, Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Did you ever know something terrible was going to happen but you didn't know when? That's the way I felt the whole time when Grandpa waited before striking back at me. It was real smart of him. Diabolical, if you want to know the truth. I walked around going crazy for about a week. I mean, it's hard to be calm when someone is going to do something to you and you don't know what it is or when it is going to happen. I lay awake without sleeping a few nights, wondering when the blow was going to come down. It reminded me of this story about an old Greek guy named Damocles who went to a party where they hung a sword over his head by a hair. It had to be either a very skinny sword or a very bad hair, but either way, it couldn't have been too comfortable to be waiting for that sword to come down and slice you into human chicken parts. I felt like I was in the dentist's office waiting my turn, wondering how much it was going to hurt. It was the same feeling I get in school just before a test when everything I study just jumps out of my head. You could ask me my own name just before a test and I might not know it. And Grandpa was teasing me, which didn't help a bit. You look nervous, he'd say. I am, for goodness sake, I'd say. I wish you'd do something already. Patience, he'd said with a funny smile that gives me a chill. Psychological warfare, right? I mean, he was messing with my mind. Then, the more he waited, and the more messed up I got. I left one of my school books home one day, just plain forgot it. I knew why. Because I was too busy worrying over what kind of trick he was going to pull on me. Grandpa told me a joke one afternoon. It was about a guy who lived below a man who took off only one shoe when he got into bed at night. The man below couldn't hardly sleep, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't think it was very funny. Chapter 30. Jenny the Spy. Right around then, while I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, a peculiar thing happened. It was a rainy Sunday. Mom was in the kitchen baking something with cinnamon in it that made the whole house smell terrific. Jenny was helping. After a while, Jenny must have helped too much because Mom sent her out of the kitchen. Grandpa was sitting in the living room with me. Dad was upstairs taking a nap. Next thing Grandpa and I knew, Jenny came walking into the room with my Monopoly game. My empty Monopoly game with all the pieces and cards hidden away by Grandpa. Let's play, Jenny said. She set the game down on the coffee table. Ahem, Grandpa said, kind of coughing. Where'd you get that? I said. I acted like I was mad. From your toy cabinet, Jenny said, where you always keep it. She began to open the box, but I stopped her by putting my hand on top of it. Don't you ask permission to go into my room and steal my game, I said real loud. Jenny looked at me funny in a way. What do you mean steal it? She said. Here it is. I think we should play Monopoly. You and me and Grandpa. That's a stupid idea, I said. Jenny blinked her eyes at me. What's the matter with you, Petey? She asked. You're acting funny. I don't want to play Monopoly, okay? I said. I have my rights, you know, and if a person doesn't want to play Monopoly, a person can't be forced to against his will. So I'll just put the game away. I didn't expect Jenny to jerk the box away, but she did. And then she opened it. I'll play with Grandpa then, if we're going to be so mean, she said. I looked at Grandpa while he looked at me. We both knew what was coming next. Hey, where are all the pieces and cards and stuff? Jenny asked. There's just a Monopoly board and nothing else in the box. There was a very long and very embarrassing silence. Jenny stared at me and Grandpa. I couldn't think what to say. Grandpa began to whistle. And then Jenny found the note I'd stupidly left in the box. Two can play at this game, she read aloud. But you can't play this game now. Signed, the old man. Old man? She looked mystified. Who is the old man? She asked. And why are the pieces missing? Well, I said, There's a perfectly simple explanation. Jenny waited. I waited too because I couldn't think of a perfectly simple explanation. Something fishy is going on here, Jenny said. Grandpa cleared his throat. You both know about this and I don't, Jenny said. Are you the old man in the know, Grandpa? Are you playing a trick on Peter? Me? Grandpa said. Me? Don't be silly. Why would I play a trick on Peter? Jenny thought about it for no more than a second. It is you, Grandpa. That's why you look so guilty. I wish you'd tell me. You know I can keep a secret. Stuff and nonsense, Grandpa said in a huffy way, like he was being insulted. One of Pete's friends did this, I'll bet. Isn't that right, Pete? Huh? I said, yeah, right. Who? Asked Jenny. The older one. Grandpa said, that's right, I said. Steve did it. He's a lot older than me, and sometimes he calls himself the old man. Steve isn't a lot older than you, Jenny said. She would make a great detective. I was thinking, sure he is, I said, months and months. So where did Steve hide all the Monopoly pieces? Jenny asked. Why don't you get them, Peter, so we can play, okay? Well, I said, you go upstairs and get them, Pete, said Grandpa, who stood up from the couch, and I'll just step up into my room and get me a sweater. It's kind of chilly in here. Now I understand what was happening. So I ran up to my room like I was getting the Monopoly stuff while Grandpa retrieved it from wherever he had hidden it. I met him outside my old room. A narrow escape there, he said. He handed me a plastic bag with all my Monopoly stuff with him, and I handed him back his watch. Thanks, he said, and slipped the watch onto his wrist. This doesn't mean I'm giving up, I told him. Of course not, Grandpa said, and I still owe you one. I believe I'm going to drop the other shoe on you any day now. Then we went back downstairs and played Monopoly with Jenny until dinner time. Chapter 31. The shoe drops. Kerplunk. When it happened, I wasn't ready for it, of course. It was an ordinary Wednesday in the middle of the week, a school day. The first thing I noticed was that my clock radio alarm hadn't gone off at the right time. I always get up at 7 o'clock, but it was already 7:15. I leaped out of bed, tangling my feet in the blanket and falling onto the floor. Next thing I noticed was that my slippers were gone. I always leave them right alongside my bed when I go asleep. Why weren't they there? I wasted a minute or two looking for them under the bed and in my closet. That's when it hit me. This was Grandpa's revenge. Now, this morning. That's why the clock was late and my slippers were gone. I rushed off to the bathroom in my bare feet and to wash my face and brush my teeth. No toothbrush. It simply wasn't there. In the plastic water glass on the sink was a note. Use your finger, it said. What a fuzzy trick. I stood there like a dummy, half of me wanting to run downstairs to the hall closet where Mom kept a few new toothbrushes, and half of me not wanting to waste the time because I was already behind schedule. I put toothpaste on my finger and brushed my teeth with it. It was disgusting. I ran back to my room in a hurry. I hate being late for anything, but I hate being late for school most of all. When I opened my underwear drawer, it was empty. There was another note. This one said, underwear in hall closet. I ran outside into the hall. There was all my underwear up on a shelf. I grabbed shorts and a t-shirt and ran back to my room and put them on. That's when I looked into my sock drawer, and that's when I saw it was empty too. Now I was mad, in a panic, yes, but mad as well. The note in my sock drawer said, socks in the cabinet under bathroom sink. I groaned and said a couple of words I shouldn't use. Grandpa was turning my getting dressed into a treasure hunt. I ran back to my room again and looked under the sink in the cabinet. There all my rolled up socks and scattered among the ivory soap, rolls of toilet paper, and a bottle of Mr. Clean. I grabbed a pair of socks and ran back to my room to put them on. By now, I figured that Grandpa's dirty tricks weren't over yet. I was right. All my flannel shirts hanging on hangers in my closet were still hanging there, but they had been turned inside out. I grabbed one and fixed it and put it on. Naturally, I buttoned it wrong and had it to rebutton it. My jeans hanging on a hook by a belt loop were inside out too. I fixed them up and put them on. Then I saw that my belt was missing. The heck with it, I thought. I was too late to worry about a little thing like a belt. That's when I discovered that there were no laces in my sneakers. I stood there staring down, my mouth hanging open like the sneakers were hanging open. I heard Mom calling up from the bottom of the stairs. "Peter, you're late, sweetie." Inside one sneaker was a note. "Laces on kitchen countertop." I stuck out my feet into the sneakers and tried to run downstairs. I couldn't. Without the laces, the sneakers kept slipping around, so I had to walk like a crazy man to keep them on my feet. I came downstairs slowly in the second floor hallway. Grandpa had his head stuck out of the door of my room. He was laughing. "Hey, Pete," he called to me. "How's it going this morning?" "It's not funny," I said. "War is hell," is what Grandpa said back. He laughed again, which only made me madder. I finally made it to the kitchen. I flip-flopped across the floor in my loose sneakers and practically fell into my chair at the table. "Peter, my mom said, why did you leave your sneaker laces on the kitchen counter?" I took a big gulp of the orange juice that was in front of my bowl of cereal. "Did you want me to wash your shoelaces?" Mom asked. She looked really puzzled. "No," I said. "It was a joke." I started to eat my Cheerios fast. Jenny was already finished with breakfast. "You're really late, Peter," she said. "I know it, dummy," I shouted at her. She looked at me like I was crazy, which maybe I was a little. "I'd better put your laces back in while you finish your breakfast," Mom said. I slipped my sneakers off, which wasn't hard to do, and Mom sat down beside me and relaced them for me. I had enough breakfast by this time. I was mad and upset and not hungry anyway. I took the sneaker Mom had relaced and put it on and tied it. She was still working on the other one. "Could you try to hurry?" I said to her. The front door slammed shut, which was Jenny leaving the house. At least she wasn't going to be late to school. "I don't understand why you left your laces down here," Mom said. She handed me the other sneaker and I put it on. Then I lit out, running for the stairs, and zoomed up to my room like a bullet. I was ready to find out that Grandpa had hidden my knapsack, but there it was right by my desk. The only thing was, it was empty. My books were missing. Inside the knapsack was another stupid joke. Books inside luggage in storage room down the hall. I ran like crazy into the room where we stored the luggage. Grandpa was so devilish. I wanted to hit him on the head with a suitcase. He had put one book in each of the pieces of luggage. So I had to unzip every one of them and get back all my books. I stuffed my books into the knapsack, then ran downstairs to the coat closet. I grabbed my jacket, threw it on, and dashed out the door. It's 6 blocks from my house to school. I ran until I was out of breath. Then I walked as fast as I could. As I rounded the corner near the school, I could see that the schoolyard was empty, which meant that all the classes were going upstairs to their rooms already. I ran across the schoolyard, and just as I got to the entrance door, I remembered something. I had forgotten my lunch. I ran upstairs to got to my class just as Mr. Pangloss, my homeroom teacher, was calling the roll. I was so out of breath that when he called my name, I could barely say here. Steve looked across at me and asked why I was so late. You wouldn't believe it if I told you, I said. Chapter 32, The Last Strategy Conference. We were eating lunch at our usual table in the lunchroom. Wait a minute, that's not exactly right. Billy and Steve were eating lunch. I was begging lunch. I got half an apple from Steve. Billy had a liverwurst sandwich which he said he hated, so he gave me half of it. I hated it too. So we both ate the bread and left the liverwurst. Steve said he would give me half of his milk to drink. The second half, he said. Luckily, a nice kid named Nathaniel Robbins gave me a peanut butter cookie. I had told the boy about my terrible morning, and they laughed like crazy. Stealing your shoelaces, Steve said. That was a master stroke. It was a rotten trick, I said. I like how you put each book in a different suitcase, Billy said, and he began laughing again. Wait a minute, I said. Whose side are you on anyway? I took a sip of the second half of Steve's milk, which was warm and hateful. One sip was enough. We walked outside to the schoolyard and sat down on the steps in the sun. You're probably going to get your grandpa back for this. Indubitably, I said, which was one of Steve's words. Not something simple, I hope, said Steve. I think this calls for a massive retaliation. It won't be something simple, I said. You've got to really get him this time, Billy said. Get him how? I asked. I don't know, Billy said. Paint his hair, maybe? I wasn't even listening to Billy because I had already decided what I would do. It was something I had thought about doing before this, but it seemed too awful. But after what Grandpa had done to me, it seemed all right now. Look, guys, I said, I know what I'm going to do. It's terrible and I probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to. And I'll tell you one other thing. If it doesn't work, I'm going to surrender. You can't, Billy said. Oh, yes, I can, I said. I learned to live in my stupid room. I won't like it, but I'll do it. Or else Grandpa will get me back in a more terrible way I don't even want to think about. You're a chicken, Billy said. And you're right, I said. I think I figured something out. War isn't such fun after all. Chapter 33, The Last Attack. The first thing I had to do was make Grandpa worry. I couldn't forget how nervous, make that terrified I was while waiting for Grandpa to drop the other shoe. Now I give him back some of his own medicine. I kept saying things like, how are you, Grandpa? And he'd say, fine. And then I say, just wait. I also developed this weird laugh. It sounded nutty even to me. So when I passed him on the stairs, I turn around, look at him, and give him my I don't know if it had any effect or not, but it made me feel good. I waited for all of that week. He'd made me almost late for school. I didn't want it to be a school day when I got my revenge. I wanted it to be home so I could see everything that was going to happen. On a Friday night, as I'd done once before, I set on my alarm for the middle of the night. Sneaking down the dark, spooky stairs was a lot easier this time. The house was quiet, but I was even quieter. The doorknob on the doors turned in my hand. I sneaked in on tippy toes. The thing I was stealing was in the glass of water on Grandpa's night table. I took the glass of water and backed slowly out of the room. Grandpa was sleeping calm and peacefully, not even snoring. I closed the door and made it upstairs very easily. I dumped the glass of water in the sink and let what was in the glass fall softly in my head. I didn't want to hurt them. I took a whole bunch of face tissues from the box and wrapped them up nicely. They made a small, soft package. I already had figured out my hiding spot. There's a large garment bag in the closet of one of our attic rooms, the kind that opens with the zipper down the side of it. Mom keeps some of Dad's old suits and a few of her dresses in it. I slid open the zipper and found a pocket in one of Dad's jackets, and then I put the package inside. Then I scooted back to my room, jumped in bed, and pulled the covers up, safe and sound. I'd done it. Now I'd have to settle back and get some sleep, because there sure was going to be a lot more excitement in the morning. Grandpa was going to be very, very angry when he woke up, and I couldn't blame him. It's really a disgusting trick to steal somebody's false teeth. Chapter 34, War's End. I couldn't believe I had slept peacefully through the rest of the night. But there was the time on my clock radio, 8:30 in the morning. I lay back in my bed and tried to listen to the house. There were stirrings from someplace downstairs. Mom was probably up by now. Saturday was her supermarket day. She usually took Dad along to help her and Jenny and me if we wanted to go. She was in the kitchen now. I heard the sound of the pot cabinet under the stove slamming shut. She was probably beginning to prepare our Sunday morning breakfast of French toast or pancakes. I heard the water running in my parents' bathroom and the second floor. That meant Dad was up and washing. Then I heard what I'd been listening for. Uneven footsteps sounded on the stairs as Grandpa came limping up to see me. I waited. There was a knock on the door. "Come on in, Grandpa," I called out. The door opened and Grandpa was there. He had one hand covering his mouth, but his eyes looked awfully angry. He came into the room sideways, his face turned towards the window and away from me. "My thief, miffing," he said. I stared at him. "What? My thief?" he said. "You ought my thief, aren't you?" I got out of bed. As I did that, Grandpa turned his back on me. "Don't look at me," he said. It sounded like he was talking pig Latin or some kind of weird language. "I don't understand you," I said. My thief," shouted Grandpa. "Eat me up, my thief, you little mother." Suddenly the dawn came up in my brain. That's the way Grandpa spoke without his teeth. Amazing and weird. "You're asking me to give your teeth back to you, right?" I said. Grandpa nodded his head, his hand still covering his mouth. "Well," I said, "you have to do something first." On thief. Feet. My thief. I mean, my thief. I translated that in my head. "You need your teeth, right? Everybody needs teeth. But we're fighting a war here, remember?" "Oh, Peter," he said, "all to be that way." "Please." "No," I said. "War is war. Surrender right now or I'll never give you back your teeth. I mean it." Grandpa turned his face towards me then, and there was such a sad look in his eyes. It almost made me want to cry. Without his teeth, his mouth looked all pushed in and wrinkled. He looked so old and helpless. Just seeing him standing there like that, a person I loved as much as anyone in the wide world, I felt about as slow as a worm's belly button. I can't explain what happened next. All I can do is tell what I did. I ran down in the hall closet where I'd hidden his teeth. When I came back in a minute, I handed them over, still wrapped so neat in those soft paper tissues. Grandpa took them and went into the bathroom, closing the door behind him. I heard the water running in the sink. Then he came out of it, teeth back in his mouth, looking like my grandpa again. We stared at each other, not saying anything. I turned away from him and looked out the window. Across the street, Mr. Top was mowing his lawn. The war is over, I said. I hope you'll forgive me for what I did. And if it makes you feel any better, I'm so ashamed of myself. I could curl up in a ball and just disappear. Oh, Peter, Grandpa said, sighing. Go on and on, I said. Your enemy does something. Maybe this is how war gets started and just go on and on, I said. Your enemy does something bad to you, so you do something worse to him. Then he gets you back and you get him back, and the whole things get bigger and bigger and meaner. And in the end, someone drops the bomb. Isn't that the way it happens? Something like that, Grandpa said. Well, I said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken your teeth. It's my fault too, Grandpa said. Don't take it all on yourself, Petey. I started it, I said, and I let you, and said Grandpa. I'm the grown up here. I think I should have known better. But you know that? You know what? I enjoyed it. It was kind of fun. And I think I needed something to get over my sadness. Grandpa came up behind me as I looked out the window. I felt his big hands on my shoulders. Then his arms grabbed me and hugged me to his chest. All of us got off the wrong foot, he said. Your parents took your room away and shut you up, Pete. That's the mistake number one. Just because you shut someone up, it doesn't mean his hurt has gone away. There should have been a family conference or something like that, including me, and we could have figured out where I was to stay. That causes a lot of wars too, Pete, not talking. I'll get used to living up here, I said. I'm real sorry I took your room away, Grandpa said. But I'm not sorry you came to live with us, I said. Grandpa hugged me a little tight and kissed the top of my head. You're a real sweet kid, he said, but a hard guy to fight a war against. I still lost, I said. Yes, Grandpa said, but only by the skin of my teeth. Chapter 35, Bottoms Up. After breakfast that day, Mom, Dad, and Jenny went off to the supermarket. I chose to stay home with Grandpa. He was sitting in the kitchen, having a stirred cup of coffee. He looked like he was thinking hard. You know, he said, there has to be another way for me to live here without taking your room away. Let's think on it, Petey. There's only so many rooms, I said. Right. I mean, you could exactly live in the kitchen or in the dining room. Bunking in the living room is out, Grandpa said with a grin. Right. And the top floor is out because of your leg. 2 flights up is too much, and the porch would be cold in the winter, Grandpa said. That's silly, I said. Of course, he said. Besides, the paper boy and the milkman would keep waking me up every morning. Grandpa, be serious. I laughed. He ran a hand from the top of his face to the bottom of and wiped off his smile. Okay, serious. What's left in this old house? The basement, I said, but that's office is down there. Say that's right. Grandpa said. I kind of forgotten that. He fixed the basement up himself, didn't he, after Grandma and me moved to Florida? It's kind of dingy, I said. Let's take a look. I opened the door in the basement, which was in the hall right off the kitchen, and Grandpa followed me down the stairs. I put on the lights. It's dark down here, I told Grandpa, because of only one of the three ceiling lights work. Grandpa looked around the big room, peeking into the tiny bathroom. Not too promising, is it? He said. That's not a good upper fixer, I said. That's why he's an accountant, Grandpa said. He took the step ladder Dad kept against the wall and set it up, then climbed and poked away a ceiling panel and peeked through the hole. These light fixtures weren't wired too good, he said, but the cable is fine. He climbed carefully down the ladder. Do me a favor, Pete, he said. Run out the garage and get me my big tape measure from out of my toolbox. Would you, please? I see I got scrap paper and pencils right there on your dad's desk. When I brought the tape measure back to him, Grandpa was talking to himself. Heating ducts and plumbing are okay, and electricity can be pulled through. It's a start anyway. Grandpa took the tape measure and began to measure the floor. I held the end time he was writing measurements on his scrap paper. Then he sat down at Dad's desk and made a sketch of the room. When he was finished, he turned the paper around so I could see it. I'm thinking about my own little apartment down here, Pete, he said. I think it could be real cozy. It's kind of dark, isn't it? I said. Well, I'd fix those lights and put it in a couple of lamps. Some of these floor tiles are loose, Grandpa. I have some carpets put down. It'll warm up the place too. The walls are yucky, I said. Paneling them will help make the place neat too. I could enlarge that little bathroom, put in a stall shower. There's a gas line over the corner, and I figured I could put in a little stove and maybe hang a cabinet there. Sometimes I could cook some things on my own or make a cup of coffee down here. Sounds like a lot of work, I said, and that door leads out of the driveway. So I'd even have my own private entrance. I don't know, Grandpa, I said. It's a lot of work. Hey, Petey, he grinned. I used to build whole houses, remember? Why, one little apartment ought to be a snap. You'll help me some, won't you? You bet. Then it'll take no time at all, and maybe a little privacy for me and a lot of privacy for the rest of you is not a bad idea. Now, all we have to do is convince your dad. It's his house after all. I had a very bad thought. What if he says no? Grandpa, I don't think he will, Pete. But what if he does? Will we have to go to war with my dad? Grandpa threw his head back and laughed. That would be fun, wouldn't it? But no, Petey, no more wars. From now on, this family will talk everything out in the open, peacefully, I hope. Chapter 36, Building the Peace. It didn't take very long to convince Dad about turning his basement office into Grandpa's new apartment. On the other hand, it wasn't easy as I thought either. I know that Dad and Grandpa and Mom talked about it a lot, mostly when I wasn't around, but I managed to listen in a few times from my secret spot under the stairs. Dad was worried about how much it was going to cost. Grandpa told him that he had money saved, and if I can't spend it on my daughter's house, making a place to live for the rest of my life? Where can I spend it? Dad seemed a lot willing after that, but he was worried about losing his office. You have your office upstairs in the guest room, Grandpa explained. 2 flights up mean nothing to you, Grandpa said, but only 1 flight down means a lot to me. Dad surrendered after that, and the work began. Grandpa got these men who used to work for him in the old days to help. They mostly worked in the evenings, moonlighting, Grandpa called it, though they kept the lights on all the time. And I helped a lot. Grandpa showed me how to bang in a nail, how to put a wire through a wall, and how to watch out for electricity when you are putting up lights. What you don't want, he told me, is a shocking experience. It took a little more than 6 weeks to finish Grandpa's basement apartment, but when it was done, it looked beautiful. He had a nice brown rug on the floor, a stove to make coffee and things, a new easy chair to just sit and relax in. Mom and Dad bought Grandpa a color TV of his own so he could watch his programs downstairs when we wanted to watch something else in the living room. And Grandpa's new little bathroom was so neat. One day, he even let me use the brand new shower stall. It was great. But the best day was when Grandpa and his friends finished moving all his furniture into the basement apartment, because when they got everything back in place, they went up to the top floor and moved all my things back to my old room. I helped them put all my stuff back in all the right places. I wanted my room to be exactly the way it was, not one thing different. I lined up the shoeboxes, holding my baseball cards in the same spot they used to be. I rehung my Hank Aaron poster right over the middle of my dresser. When everything was in place and Grandpa and his friends left, I lay down on my bed and thought for a while. I have to tell you, I had a smile on my face and I just couldn't take it off. I was back where I belonged, in my room where I'd always lived. It was like I had put my favorite pair of flannel pajamas that first cold night in the fall. My room was comfortable and it fit me. I belonged to it and it to me again. And then I started to think about some other things too. How you shouldn't always do what your friends tell you to do. They're not living your life, you are. And you have to decide what's right or wrong. While I was lying there, feeling the best I'd felt in a long while, I heard a loud banging noise on the outside of my door. I got up to look. When Grandpa swung the door open, he had a hammer in his hand and one more nail to put in. "It's a little present I made for you," he said. He was hanging a wooden sign on my door that had letters kind of burned in the wood. "Pete's Place," the sign said. I grabbed Grandpa and gave him a hug. "It's terrific," I said. "Thanks." He gave me his best smile. "You didn't lose your room, Pete," he said, "and you've gained a grandpa." Chapter 37. For my teacher. This last chapter is only for you, Mrs. Klein. I want to thank you for all the encouragement you gave me when I wanted to quit so many times, and for giving me much extra time to finish, like the whole term. I think maybe when I grow up, I might be a writer. I got used to slipping upstairs into my dad's office to type a chapter every night after dinner. One of them took even longer. Some of the longer chapters took a week, and one of them took even longer. Mostly it was fun, but some of it was hard work. I felt so dumb sitting there when the words wouldn't come. But if you wait long enough and think hard enough and your little sister keeps out of your hair, then you can do it. I learned that starting is the hardest part, and it gets easier as you go along. But the ending is making me a little sad. I'm thinking, what will I do tomorrow night instead of coming here to work on my story? Maybe I'll have to start thinking about another story. Anyway, this is the true and real story of Peter Stokes and the war with his grandpa. I hope you like it. And I sure hope you don't take too much off for bad spelling and grammar.